It is great to be with you this evening. It's been a little while since we've seen Brother Jeff. We had him over at West Georgia a little while back. He did our youth weekend. Every year at the end of January, we do a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday youth weekend, and we were glad to have him over there, and certainly happy to hear the lessons that he had to bring for our young people. So it's great to have that connection with you over here, and this is my first time to be at this building, at this place. So it's a joy to be here and to meet you all, and look forward to this study together tonight. I understand you've been studying the song this summer, all of self and none of thee, some of self and some of thee, less of self, more of thee, and now we're to the point of looking at none of self and all of thee. And tonight we're going to be studying from Matthew chapter 14, if you'd like to be turning there. Matthew 14, verses 22 through 33. Particularly, we're going to be looking at this passage dealing with Jesus walking on the water, and of course, Peter asking to come out and walk on the water to Jesus. And Jesus tells him to come. So this is what we're going to be focusing on tonight, and looking at what was taking place about this time. In a broader picture, we know that Jesus, by this point, has been going about doing a lot of things that were drawing attention. What kind of things did Jesus do that drew a lot of attention to him? Signs, wonders, miracles. He healed people. You go back a little bit in Matthew and you read about a time or two when Jesus healed all the sick that they brought to him. What else was he doing besides healing people?
Speaking with authority.
What's that?
Speaking with authority.
Speaking with authority, okay. They made note when Jesus spoke because he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. That was the point. Did you say feeding? That's what took place right before this event, is he had just fed 5,000 men plus the women and children, all with what we can see was a little boy's meal. So he took these when you read 5 loaves and 2 fish, what do you think about? When I hear loaves, I think about Wonder Bread, a loaf of bread. That's not the idea. And I think of 2 fish, well, it depends on whether you're fishing with me or somebody else. I like to think of fish, I don't usually catch fish like that. I usually catch them more like that. But we're not even talking about this. You're talking about something more along the lines of sardines, small fish, and small loaves that we would think of like crackers. This boy was carrying a meal in a basket, and Jesus takes it and starts dividing and dividing and dividing. I don't know about you, but if I divide something small, it gets smaller. He divided it, and it just kept growing. And he kept giving out more and more and more until he fed this whole multitude of people. Why would he do such a thing? Compassion. Okay, it tells us the people were hungry. And the disciples wanted to send them away to go find food. Well, it tells us they were in a desolate place. They would have had to travel a good ways. They would have left Jesus. They would have gone somewhere else. And likely many of them would not have come back. So Jesus takes the opportunity, rather than sending them away, to start doing something that's going to draw attention. No doubt when he gave food to the first person and still had food to give, that got attention. But what about when he was giving food to the 1,000th person and the 2,000th person, all the way to the 5,000? And that was just the numbers of the men. Then there were the women and the children. We're not sure how many were in this multitude, but it was a lot of people. And he fed all of them. And do you know what their desire was at this point? If you read this same account over in John chapter 6, John says the people were of a mind to take Jesus and make him be their king. Who would not want a king who could heal the sick? Who could make lame people walk, blind people see, deaf people hear? Who would not want a king who could take a little bit of food and feed a multitude? Who wouldn't want a king who could do these great physical things? Any nation at any time would love to have a king like this. I find it interesting that Jesus tells his disciples, get into a boat and go. His apostles. Get in a boat and go to the other side. If you read in Mark's account and in John's account, that's Mark 6 and John 6, he was telling them, go over to Bethsaida. Go over to Capernaum. Go across the water, get out over here, and keep going. I wonder why. You know what else, or who else had difficulty with Jesus in the idea of him becoming a king? His own apostles. They wanted him, they expected him, from the Jewish perspective, to build an earthly kingdom in Jerusalem, to reign on David's throne. Had God spoken in prophecy about the Messiah coming, who would sit on David's throne, who would reign? Yes. Did he ever say it would be in Jerusalem? No. And in fact, you read Psalm 89 and you read that David's throne, the power of it, the reign of it, was being removed from earth, taken to heaven. And then later, of course, the Messiah would come and he would sit on David's throne and reign in heaven, not in Jerusalem. The disciples, his own apostles, had trouble with this idea. So no doubt, knowing the mindset of the people that they want to take and make him be their king, force him to be their king, he doesn't want his apostles caught up in this. So he tells them, go. Get on a boat and go. So they get on a boat and they go. The evening time was come, because we read that not only did Jesus send his apostles away, but after he did that, he sent the multitudes away. He had fed, notice he didn't send them for food. He had fed them already with a miracle, and then he sends his apostles across the water. He sends the multitudes away, and he goes up into the mountain to pray. And the evening comes, and he's there alone. So some hours pass. Because if you read there in Matthew 14, beginning in verse 22, you're going to read about Jesus constraining his disciples to get into a ship, go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up in a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea. Okay, now stop for just a minute. It's been a while since the apostles get in the boat. What sea is this? Where are they? Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee. They're in the middle of the sea. Anybody know about how large the Sea of Galilee is? How far across it is? It'd be about 6 to 7 miles. So several hours have passed, and they're in the middle of the sea. They've gone about 3 miles, 3.5 miles, out in the middle. Now, if nothing's going on by this amount of time, they should have been to the other side. Why were they not at the other side? Were they just hanging out in the boat? No, it tells us, doesn't it? A wind had come up that was contrary. Now, if you're reading from the King James, that's what you read, contrary. What does the word contrary mean? To be against. The wind was blowing into their faces, as we would say, going against them. They're going into the wind. Do you know what you cannot do if you're going into the wind? You can't sail, right? I was in a boat just the other day. That was not a sailboat. It's just a little fishing boat. But we were on a bay, and the wind was blowing across the bay. Well, we were fishing on the bank where the wind was blowing toward. Do you know what we were constantly having to do? Crank up the trolling motor and pull out. Because every few minutes it would push us right back into the shore. Well, if you're trying to go against the wind, guess what? You can't sail. Sailing goes with the wind, not against the wind. Now, if you don't have a sail, you can use currents if the water has currents, but this is the middle of a, what kind of a sea? What kind of water is this? Sweet water. That's right. What does that mean? Fresh. Fresh water. You ever look at your Bible map there and see the land of Canaan, and you see what runs down the eastern side? Let me turn around with you. Down the eastern side of the land of Canaan, what is it? The Jordan River that comes out of the mountains up in the north, and as it flows south, you have Lake Hula, small lake, way up there above Galilee. Then you get down to the Sea of Galilee, and then it runs eventually into the Dead Sea. And where does it go from there? It doesn't. That's the end of the Jordan River. I don't believe it used to be the end of the Jordan River. You go back to Genesis 18 and 19 and read about Sodom and Gomorrah and those cities of the plain. And if you get a topographical map of that area today, there is a little valley, an indentation that runs from the Dead Sea all the way down. When you're looking at the Red Sea, you remember the two gulfs that come up out of the Red Sea? One of them has some tributaries and things that go up toward the Mediterranean. One of them is pointed straight at the Dead Sea. And there is a little valley of indentation that runs right down to that gulf. I believe it used to connect. The Jordan River ran all the way down to the Red Sea. But what made it change? Destruction. Judgment. What made it change was judgment. I do know for a fact, whether the Jordan River ran all the way down there or not, that area south of the Dead Sea used to be a lush and well-watered plain. That's where Lot chose to go and settle toward Sodom, because of how lush and well-watered it was. It's not anymore. Now, do you know what they mine around the Dead Sea? Salt. I heard somebody explain years ago, the reason the Dead Sea is so full of salt and all the elements that are there is because it takes all this in from the Jordan and it doesn't put anything out. Stop and think about that for a minute. The Jordan is what kind of water? Fresh. Lake Eula's fresh water. Sea of Galilee's fresh water. Why is it called the Lake Eula and Sea of Galilee? Because it's bigger. If it's big enough, they called it a sea. It didn't mean it was salt water. It was fresh water. It was fed by the Jordan River, and it ran right down to the Dead. The Jordan's not pumping sediment and salt and minerals into the Dead Sea. They're there already. They're already there in the land. It's fresh water running in. So you've got them on the Sea of Galilee, a freshwater lake. A wind blows up into their faces, and they're right out in the middle, which means rowing as hard as they can, they're probably not making much headway. They're kind of stuck out in the middle. And what happens? What's the difficulty? They see Jesus coming, walking on the water. I've jumped out of a boat before. In fact, in my lifetime, I've jumped out of several boats. And do you know what I've never done? I've never landed on the water. Prepositions are very important. I have found myself in the water every time I've done it, because I went from being outside of the water, going into the water, and then I'm in the water. Right? I've never jumped out of a boat and landed on the water. Never. Not one time. Peter never had either. Now, Peter is a commercial fisherman. He's not a fisherman like me who likes to go out and throw a line out and try to catch a fish. He's not that kind of fisherman. These men go out with big boats and they drop nets and they pull in fish, and when they get back to the shore, they take care of all of their equipment and they take the fish to town, to the market, and they sell it and make money so they can provide everything they need for their families. This is their job. Later on, when Jesus is crucified and the disciples are still not set in their mind about His resurrection and what's going on, you remember what Peter said? I'm going fishing. He did not mean, I'm bored, I'm going to go drop a line and see if I can catch lunch. He was saying, I'm going back to my life. I'm going back to work. I'm going back to what I know and what I do. And so we're seeing Peter and the other apostles on this boat. It's not the first time they've been in a storm. It's not the first time they've been in a storm when Jesus was there. The other time, He was down below asleep. And they were afraid they were going to die. And so they go down and wake Him up. Oh, we're going to perish in this storm. And how does Jesus react to this? He rebukes the wind and the waves. He also rebukes His apostles. Their lack of faith. When we see Jesus walking on the water and these apostles see Him, their immediate reaction is fear. How would you feel? It's easy to blame them. How would you feel if you're out in the middle of this sea in a storm, and it's so stormy that you're kind of afraid. And these are fishermen, commercial fishermen. They live their lives on the water. They're not scared by the first wind that blows up, but they're in a storm, a wind that's strong enough that it bothers them, and now they see somebody walking on the water. You think that might affect you? I think it would me. If I looked up and saw somebody walking across the water in the middle of the night, did you catch that in the text? It was in the 4th watch of the night. Do you know how many watches there were in a night? 4. From 6 o'clock in the evening till 9 o'clock was watch 1. From 9 to 12 was watch 2. From 12 to 3 was watch 3. From 3 to 6 was watch 4. And at 6 o'clock, now it was day. Their day went from 6 in the morning to 6 at night. So the night went from 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning. It was the way they kept their calendar. So this is between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning. This is before daylight, more than likely. And they see Jesus walking on the water. So they left before evening came, which means they've been out on the water now for 9+ hours during the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd watches of the night. That's 3 hours apiece. So now it's over 9 hours since they got on the boat, and they're still only in the middle of the sea. They should have been across. They should have been there in plenty of time earlier than this. But now they're in the middle of the sea. They're in this, and it's probably pitch black, and they see a figure walking on the water. What's their assumption? It's a ghost. It's a spirit. Why would you immediately assume it's a ghost or a spirit? Because we can't walk on the water. None of us can. Listen, I've seen them. I've seen the illusionists. What's his name? Chris Angel and others who walk on the water. You know, they're not walking on water, are they? There's plexiglass right under the water or boards right under the water, and they know right where to step and what to do, and they make it look cool. But they're not walking on water. How do you and I both know that somebody on TV today is not walking on water? Physics. It cannot happen. And that's exactly what these 12 men in a boat were thinking when they saw someone out on the water. So where does your mind go? I know people can't walk on the water. We know this water. We fish it all the time. So he's not walking in a shallow spot. They're out in the middle of the sea. This is deeper water. And there's somebody walking on top of it. Obviously, it's not somebody in human form. They just made a logical leap there. It must be a spirit. It must be something else. And when they're afraid, Jesus cries out to them and says, "Be not afraid." You don't need to be afraid. It's me. Now, these 12 men who know Jesus, who love Him, who follow Him, who've heard what He has had to say, still have some difficulty with understanding and holding on to all of it. He has sent them out. And think about this for a minute. This one that they know is the creator and the master of the sea, who has command over the wind and the waves. The one who can say, "Peace, be still," and the storm quits. He sent them out in a boat to go across to the other side, and now the wind is in their face, and 9 hours later, they're in the middle of the sea. Maybe they weren't expecting Jesus. Why would He send them out into a storm? Why would He put them out there? When He tells them, "It's me, don't be afraid." Listen, the wind hasn't stopped. It's still blowing. The waves are still going. And Peter makes a request. Now, you're going to read in your text, more than likely, "Lord, if it is you." That's not the right word. It's Peter saying, "Lord, since it is you." That's a better translation of the word. Obviously, now you've spoken to us and told us, "Here's who I am." Okay, since it's you, bid me to come out to you on the water. He makes a request to Jesus that unless Jesus is there, this Jesus whom you've seen, get some dirt in his hand and spit in it and make mud and rub it on a blind man's eyes and tell him to go wash it off and he can see. This Jesus who's told a man who was lame from birth, get up, take up your bed and walk. This Jesus who they just got done watching, taking a boy's meal and feeding thousands with it. If this wasn't Jesus out on the water, then Peter has lost his mind. Because do you know who Peter is at this point? I'm not sure exactly what his age is. He's married. Later on we know he has children. I don't know if he's already got them or if they come along later. How do we know he has children? You ever read about Peter's children in the New Testament? You do? Do you ever read about Peter's wife in the New Testament? Who do you read about? Mother-in-law. She was sick. Jesus healed her. So he's got a mother-in-law, which means he has to have a wife. How do we know he has children? Because he's an elder later on. By the time you're reading 1st and 2nd Peter, he's an elder in the church. He's not only a Christian who was an apostle, he serves as an elder. And he cannot serve as an elder unless he has children. So we know he's a family man, but I don't know his exact age at this point. Maybe he's 30 years old, maybe he's 40 years old. I don't know. It's just a guess. I do not know his age. But however long he's been living, he's the son of a fisherman. And as soon as he was old enough to start working with his father as a fisherman, he's a fisherman. His brother's a fisherman. His cousins are fishermen. Peter knows water. Peter knows all the properties and qualities of water. I don't know if he knew H2O. I don't know if he knew the chemical composition of what water is. But he knew all the properties of water. If you roll out of the boat, you go into the water. You get wet all over. And then you swim. Or you sink. He knew all about water. He'd seen all of that stuff. He knew when you lower a net down, it don't float on top of the water. It goes down into the water where the fish are, and when the fish get in the net, you pull it up. He knew all about the water. He said, Lord, since this is you, bid me to come out to you on the water. That's quite a request, isn't it? I see you on the water. Bid me to come out to you. I can't do this myself. You make it happen. That's a great understanding of Peter with his Lord. If Jesus tells him, come out on the water, he's going to do it. He knows he can. He knows if Jesus doesn't say that, he can't do it. He can get out into the water, but he can't get out onto the water. So he says, Lord, bid me. If it's your will, then it can be done. You know, that's exactly what the Bible tells us faith is. Or how faith develops, how it comes. How does faith develop? Romans 10:17. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. He knew if God spoke, that's what it is. So when Jesus responds to Peter's request and says simply, come, it says Peter got down out of the boat. You want to talk about faith? I've been dealing with water all of my life. So have you. And I know the properties and what happens when you deal with water. So did Peter. But when Jesus said, come, he got down out of the boat. He got down onto the water. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stop and ponder and think about what this was going to do. Jesus said, come, and Peter went. Think about his reliance on Jesus. What he understood at this point. He makes a request. Jesus responds and says, come. And he just steps right out on the water. He trusts Jesus. It's not just that he likes Jesus or is close to Jesus, is a friend of Jesus. He is a disciple of Jesus. He trusts him. He trusts him enough that when Jesus says, come, he simply gets out. And he starts going to Jesus. He gets out and walks on the water. Now, I've found shallow places before, and I've walked on the bottom with the water around me, but I've never walked on the water. I wonder what a sensation that would be. What that would feel like to know I'm doing something that's impossible. Now that's just thinking about us and water and physical nature, physics. But it wasn't just about physics. It wasn't just the amazement of stepping out and having water be your support under your feet. It wasn't just that. If that was all it was, I would assume Peter would have just walked right to Jesus. Why didn't he keep walking to Jesus? Oh. You know, our sight is very important to us. And I've heard people say, if you see it, then you can believe it. Well, we've learned with computers and technology and special effects and all, even if you see it, you still can't believe it sometimes. But it's not just that he was walking on water. It says that he took notice of something other than Jesus. What did he take notice of? Remember where they were? In the middle of the sea, with the wind blowing so strongly that it was a storm, and they were out in the middle of it. That still hasn't stopped. This is not the instance where Jesus rebukes the wind and the waves and they just stop. That hasn't happened. It's still going on. There's still the turmoil of the wind and the waves and the tumultuous sea. He has gotten out on that sea and he's walking toward Jesus, and he takes notice of the wind, of the waves. And he begins to be afraid. You want to know what one of the strongest detriments to faith is? Fear. That's true today, just like it was with Peter. We'll talk about that again in just a few minutes. He becomes afraid. And when he becomes afraid, listen, I love this phrase. He begins to sink. What does that mean to you? How do you read that? He begins to sink. You know what happens if you're standing on a platform right there on top of the water and somebody yanks it out from under you? Do you begin to sink? It's kind of all at once thing, isn't it? It's a splash, and then you're in the water. He began, just from a physical standpoint, he's walking on water. As he notices the wind and the waves again and begins to be afraid, he starts to sink. You get an idea of what's happening? What's holding him on top of the water? It is Jesus' power, yes. It's his faith and trust in Jesus. Jesus says, come. He comes. He's walking on the water. When he notices the wind and the waves, when he takes his eyes off of Jesus and has his focus on something else, his fear starts to ratchet up. Therefore, his faith starts to drop. And as his fear climbs and his faith drops, he starts sinking. What do you think is going to happen to his fear and then counterwise to his faith as he starts sinking? It's going to keep going, isn't it? Fear is going to grow and faith is going to drop. If he doesn't do something in a hurry, he's fixing to be up to here in water, in wind and waves, in the same tumultuous situation that he was before, but now he's not in the boat any longer. Now he's gotten himself out there where he has no other protection, no other safety. His faith took him out of the boat. His fear put him in danger. And what happens? He cries out to Jesus. You know, sometimes, whether we realize it or not, we just do the right thing. Sometimes we think it through, and it's a conscious decision of faith that we're doing the right thing. Sometimes you just happen to. He cries out to the only person that can help him. The one that he walked toward. He was going to Jesus. Now he's starting to sink. I don't know if he's knee deep, if he's hip deep. I don't know how far he is in the water, but he's going down. His fear is ratcheting up. Why does he cry out to Jesus? So I've heard people say, well, all of a sudden he looked back at Jesus and he refocused his faith. Maybe. Or maybe he's just desperate. He's going down in the water and the only person standing there on the water now is Jesus. And he cries out, Lord, save me. And Jesus, so disgusted and disappointed with Peter, steps over there and puts his foot on his head and holds him under for a minute. No, what does it say? Immediately, he stretches his hand down and he takes hold of Peter. And they go to the boat together. Now, on another occasion, he rebuked the wind and the waves, and they stopped. On this occasion, when they get back into the boat, it doesn't say that Jesus said a word. When they get into the boat, it stops. The storm is done. If you read in Mark and John's account of this, not only did he get back into the boat with Peter alongside and the storm just stops, but it says immediately they were at the other side. Now, you tell me how you go from the middle of the sea to immediately being at the other side. You're talking about another miracle. Jesus is showing them so much right here. And we can talk about faith and about failure, about weakness, about Peter. You know, we talk about Peter and his failures so often. And I've heard others say it, that we like Peter because we see so many flaws. And we see him still being faithful, which gives me hope. That I can stick my foot in the pothole sometimes, and with Jesus I can get back out of it and I can keep going. We do appreciate that about Peter, but I don't want us to be too hard on Peter and run him down too far. What would we have assumed if we saw somebody walking on top of the water out in the middle of a storm? What would we have done when he said, "It's me, don't be afraid"? Would I have made the request, "Let me step out on there with you"? And even if he said, "Come," would I have just immediately, like Peter, climbed out of the boat and gone? Would I have kept my eyes on Jesus? Ignored the wind and the waves and just walked right over there to him? I like to think sometimes if I start putting myself in these other people's shoes, I like to think that I would have done it better. I would have done it differently. I've heard people from all the way back at the beginning, boy, if I'd been Eve, I sure wouldn't have listened to a snake. Well, if Eve wasn't like the rest of us, then who are we? Have I sinned? Has my faith failed? Have I been faced with situations and choices and decisions and made the wrong ones? If so, then I have been in the shoes of Eve. I have been in the shoes of Peter. I have been in the shoes of all of these people. They're shown to us for a reason. It's not so we can elevate some and hold them up on a pedestal and tear the legs out from under others and just talk bad about them every time we get a chance. It's showing us real people at real times, facing real circumstances, and either coming through faithful to God or not. And that's exactly what we should be seeing looking at our own lives. We are real people living in a real time, facing real circumstances, making real choices and decisions, either of faith or not, either being faithful to God or not. we find ourselves just like these people of Scripture. We find ourselves facing such similar situations and circumstances. And rather than attack these folks, we need to see them for who they really are and understand who we are. We sing that song, and y'all have been going through it in this summer series. All of self and none of thee. Which one of us has not had that attitude? This is all about me, who I am, what I have the power to do, my rights, my freedoms, my choices, and God is just out of the picture. More of self, less of thee. You're there, but you stay in the background where you belong. I'm running this ship. Some and some, less and more. None and all. Do we recognize what a battle we're facing as we go through the progression of that song? Every one of us, when we are in the world, when we are in sin, when we are without Christ, we are at the beginning of that song. And every one of us starts going through the stages of this song. Still most of me, but some of you. Oh, no. I know in ideology, the moment we come to Christ, we say He's our Lord. He's our Master until it gets to what I want. When it really gets to what I want, I call Him Lord and Master, but then I hear His question, why call you me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? I think most of us can see as we have been Christians for a while and keep growing, we get to that point of maybe leveling out. Maybe get to the point of further subjection and elevating Him. How many of us truly get to the point where I am not in the way anymore? Where His will is my will. Where His will truly masters over every facet of my being. You want to know why? Even though it was something they understood in concept, it was so hard for them to hear when they said, what's the great commandment in the law? And He says, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. You love the Lord with everything you are, with everything you have, everything that's in you. Because if you can do that, the rest of it comes easily. The rest of it comes easily. Where we struggle is when we love self more than we love God. That's where we struggle. All humanity. That's everybody in this room and everybody in this world. Where we struggle is when it comes to denying self and elevating God. Putting Him where He's supposed to be and putting me where I'm supposed to be. Because you know what? I've got rights. Don't I? Don't you? And aren't we willing to tell everybody in the world about them? I got the right to do this, the right. You can't tell me. Boy, that's an attitude that we all can have at times. And that we all better put into check when we're dealing with our God. None of self and all of thee? Well, the only way that's possible is if I get me out of the way. Jesus did not say, if you're really going to come after me, then you elevate me. That wasn't the first thing out of His mouth. What was the first thing out of His mouth? Deny yourself. The first process or step of this process is me. I cannot see my God the way that I'm supposed to if I'm standing in the way. I have to deny self so that I can take up His cross and follow Him. I have to deny me. None of self and all of thee. I think this is a progression in this song that we're going to have to recognize is going to be a difficulty every day that we live. We're not going to hit a point in our faithfulness and our struggles of Christianity and our desire to do the right thing. We're not going to hit a point where we go, oh, finally, I have gotten on that plateau. I'm there. None of self, all of thee. Now it's just gravy from here. No, because every day that I wake up, guess who's there? Me. Every time I walk in the bathroom and look in the mirror, who do I see? Me. Every time a temptation is placed in front of me, who am I having to deal with? Me. I can get real cross with you if you put a stumbling block in front of me. Why'd you do that? You know who stumbled on the block? Me. I have to deal with me every day. And I kind of like me. I do. I'm kind of fond of me. I don't want to over-elevate myself. I never want to put myself too highly. But I like me. I want what's best for me. And it's difficult to think that there's somebody else out there who gets me better than me. Who knows what's good for me better than me. Who can provide for me better than me. None of self and all of thee. It's easy to pick Peter apart. It's not so easy if we find ourselves in that same position and if we really think about what he was having to deal with. Thank you all so much for your time this evening. It's been a joy meeting you and being with you. Oh, yes. Let's dismiss in a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful for these people we get to read about in Thy Word. We're thankful for the examples we get to see, for their successes and their failures. We're thankful that we get to learn and grow and benefit through their lives as well as the lives of those around us today. And we pray that we will pay great heed to see the pictures that you want us to see. We pray that we will be strengthened as we continue to faithfully study your word. We pray that our failures will also enlighten us, that we will learn and grow and be strengthened from those as well. We're thankful for Jesus and His blood, for the forgiveness that Peter was able to have and that we too can have when we do come short. We pray for your blessings to be upon us as the church, upon each one of us individually as your children. We pray that as we go out into the world, we can be shining examples of good and right and holy. We pray that we can show others the way to your saving blood. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.